Welcome back to another episode of the Purpose Babe Show. I'm your host, Corie Clark. Thank you so much for tuning in. This week is a special episode for any of you mamas out there who are homeschooling, who are doing school at home, whether it's by choice or because of the pandemic, or if you've even considered it. So I'm sure most of you know, if you have followed me for any length of time, you do know that I have homeschooled my kids for most of their lives, and it was by choice. When we started homeschooling back when my oldest was only 6 years old, so that was almost 15 years ago, it was because he had started asking about it, and at first I was like, no. This is not what we do. We are not homeschooling people. But the more I researched it and prayed about it, the more I just felt like it was what we were supposed to do with our kids. So we have been homeschooling for 15 years. And I love talking about homeschooling. I love helping other parents if they're on that journey, if they're new to that journey. And so I'm really excited about today's episode because I have my friend Serena Ryan on the show with us today. Serena and I have been in masterminds together. She was in my mastermind last year. And not only are we good friends, but we actually, we love doing life together and talking business together and, of course, homeschooling. So Serena, her business is helping moms become confident homeschoolers and dads, but I know that most of you listening are females, so I'm really excited for you guys to listen into our conversation. And no matter where you are on this journey, whether you have kids in school or you're homeschooling or you have them home because you've kind of been forced to, I really think that this episode, you can still glean some great nuggets from this conversation, no matter where you are on that journey. So before we dive into our conversation, let me just share a little bit about Serena. So Serena is the founder of the Confident Homeschooler. After a turbulent start homeschooling her own children, she became passionate about helping other parents with an interest to homeschool. She helps them get started with success and with confidence, and she loves spreading awareness on the beauty of homeschooling and empowering parents. You can find resources and all that info in the show notes, and we'll dive into some of that in our conversation. But what I love about our conversation as well is because we are both entrepreneurial families. We want that freedom lifestyle where we're not tied down because of, our kids needing to be at school or because of a job. And so it just kind of goes hand in hand and it's aligned with our purpose. So I'm really excited for you guys to meet my beautiful friend, Serena. Without further ado, here is our conversation. All right, you guys, welcome my friend Serena to the show. How are you doing, Serena?
Hi, Corie. I am doing wonderfully. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Of course. I'm so excited. I cannot wait for you to share how you help women and what your journey has looked like, because obviously there are more and more homeschooling entrepreneurs these days, maybe because they were forced or maybe because they don't want their kids back in school. Whatever the reason, you and I have kind of been on that same journey, but I just think that you have a lot of wisdom to share. So why don't you go ahead and share your story, your journey of, entrepreneurship and becoming a homeschool mom and all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, I would start out by saying that I'm definitely an unlikely homeschooler and I'm also an unlikely entrepreneur, meaning like I wasn't raised with either one of those things being in my upbringing or like the culture of how I was raised. No one in my family is entrepreneurial. My parents surely aren't. And so it was kind of like you go to college, you get a job. And I went to college for nursing, and I did work a job as a nurse for a while. And same with homeschooling. I grew up with a Catholic private school education. I went to an all-girls school, and it was, education was always very important in my family, getting straight A's, going to college. And nobody in my circle of influence was homeschooled. I never, ever had a homeschooled friend. I thought they were like the weirdest people, to be honest. I never understood it because I never was around it. And then I met my husband, who was raised the opposite of me. He was homeschooled for part of his education. He had plenty of homeschooled friends, being raised Christian and being a Christian himself. And his dad was an entrepreneur. Therefore, he was raised with a strong entrepreneurial spirit. So it was a lot of fun when I met him, and he kind of wanted me to be where he was at right away. And it took me some time because I wasn't conditioned. I didn't grow up in that environment. So it took years of me working, and I supported him. He became an entrepreneur when I was pregnant with our oldest one. Like, he started out on his entrepreneurial journey, and it was rough. I think our first year business, we laughed because we made $8,000. And if it weren't for my nursing career, we would have been in the poorhouse for sure. So over time, I kind of just opened up as my kids were growing to open up to homeschooling because he kept talking about it. And then I went to business events with him where I was introduced to more entrepreneurial ways and more entrepreneurs. And both things just inspired me. And I just felt 100%, this is what we need to do. I'm going to stop working, homeschool the kids, and help either run my own business or help my husband run our family business. And I just really became obsessed with the vision of freedom and us having freedom of space and time and freedom to just go wherever we wanted to go at any time. And I knew that the entrepreneurial world would gift us that. And if we had our kids in school, we wouldn't have that freedom to travel that we wanted. So I knew that the two going hand in hand, homeschooling and entrepreneurialism, were like what we wanted. And so, in a long story short, or long story long, that's kind of like the birth of how we started. So I've always homeschooled. Our kids were never in school. They're 9 and almost 7 now. And then, therefore, the Confident Homeschooler was birthed out of my love for entrepreneurialism and homeschooling, so that I could help parents like me who are very unlikely homeschoolers to be confident and feel 100% like they are qualified to do the darn thing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. So, now you never, like you said, you never had your kids in school. I did have my kids in school for a very short period. Parker was in school for like pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade. And then I pulled them out. So, and then Morgan was only to pre-K, and Brody never. So I do know like a little bit of both worlds, and it was definitely hard. Like, sure, it was nice. Like, when Parker was in school all day, you kind of feel like you have a break, but then you really don't, because you're rushing to get them to school and you're rushing to pick them back up and you're trying to do homework and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely does not work well with an entrepreneurial lifestyle if you want, like you said, like if you want to be able to travel and just have that freedom. Now, if you just want to, stay home and be like, stuck in one town and, have to deal with like getting, vacation excuses and stuff for your kids, then sure, that works. But for us, yeah, it gave us that same freedom where we were able to move and it didn't affect the kids pulling them out of school, and we were able to go on vacations off season when there's less people at the places, and that kind of stuff. So but I love that you also took like your expertise and you turned it into something to help other women, because I do think there is, and I love that it's called the Confident Homeschooler, because I feel like that's something that women struggle with. They feel like I'm going to ruin my kid, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not a teacher. So how can I teach my kids, that kind of stuff. So tell me a little bit about the Confident Homeschooler and, why you created it, who it's for, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So when I started out homeschooling, I wasn't some like pro homeschooling person. Not having any circle of influence that homeschooled, I really figured it out on my own. I read tons of books, all the blogs, Pinterest posts, all the things. And I struggled for the first few years because I really tried to mimic a school environment in my home. So
Mm.
because all I'd ever known was school, I tried to have a schedule like school and set up a schoolroom like school and have my 5-year-old son sit down at a desk for hours like school. And I immediately got super frustrated. And so through that experience and not feeling like I had a mentor or I didn't have anyone to talk to, any friends who homeschooled at the time, I really felt passionate once I did become confident and I did meet more people and I read more books and I realized that I was trying to, fit a square peg in a round hole type of thing. Once I realized the freedom of homeschooling and how I could kind of create the homeschool I wanted without the constraints of a school building and a school schedule, that's when I realized like, oh, other people need to know this. They need to know that the confidence really starts with them. And if they're trying to replicate a school environment in their home, they're never going to win. They're going to hate it. And it's going to be an uphill climb that's really painful. So that's kind of where the Confident Homeschooler came. Is like I wanted people to know that they are so qualified as the parent of their child. You know your child better than anyone else. And that alone makes you qualified to teach them because thanks to the internet, we have endless amounts of resources. And so even if you don't want to be the ones teaching them, there's online schools, there's online programs, there's tutors, there's co-ops. And then in Tennessee, I know they call them tutorials. There's all these different things, different resources available to you. And I just wanted to help educate parents and let them know those things. And so that's why I started the Confident Homeschooler, is exactly that, to help parents homeschool confidently. And yeah, since then we're mainly on Instagram. We have like a brand on Instagram to encourage parents. And we created a course, I guess, over a year ago now. So we have Homeschool with Confidence that really has the framework I developed, which in my opinion, it starts with deschooling, which I think is the most important part of the whole thing. Because you can know, yeah, like you can know all the state laws, you can know all the curriculum, and which I did. I became a pro in all of that first, but I didn't deschool myself. Therefore, it was awful. And so I'm trying to help people realize, like, if you deschool yourself first and unlearn all the garbage from school and like reform new beliefs first, then when you learn all the things about homeschooling and curriculum, you can kind of discern, well, what's our vision and what aligns with our vision, kind of like when you have a business, and what doesn't align with our vision for our homeschool. And it makes your whole life just so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you are homeschooling or thinking about homeschooling, I highly suggest, following the Confident Homeschooler, grabbing that course. Because it's so true. And I read, I started out by reading books too. And that was like, oh my gosh. I mean, there was internet, but I mean, there wasn't Pinterest or anything like that. There wasn't even Facebook. Well, maybe there was Facebook. I can't remember. It was so long ago.
It was like
Anyways,
04.
okay. So I don't even know if I had Facebook. Like
Yeah.
because it started out for college students. Anyways, I did not have community. I did have a couple of friends who were homeschooling. So one of the books that I read that definitely set me on my journey was Dumbing Us Down by Jonathan Taylor Gatto. I don't know how you say that. Gatto?
Yeah. I think you did well.
And just because going back to you saying recreating the schoolroom, the traditional classroom in your home, I feel like that is where so much stress begins. And then reading that book where he was a teacher, he was a very like he got awards, he was an amazing teacher in New York. But he talked about how the system is set up to dumb us down, the
Mhm.
bell ringing, the changing classes, every 45 minutes. And so he started to take a different approach with his students. And anyways, it's an amazing book. I highly suggest it to anybody who, even if you've never considered homeschooling, it really opens your eyes to how the system is set up. And this is nothing against, like I always say, I have nothing against teachers or, principals or anything. They're just doing their job. And most of them are doing it for the right reason because they love kids and they want to help kids. It's just that the actual system is set up to really, it's not for our kids' benefit. And so then when you try to recreate that at home, you can tell it just feels off. Like you can literally see like, oh my gosh, why am I trying to do this to my kids? And what are we doing? And you kind of have like this meltdown of like, what am I doing? Like, I don't
Exactly.
like this. But I didn't have, besides the couple of friends, it really was just this journey of trying stuff, trial and error, figuring stuff out. And I remember I went to a homeschool conference. It was so funny because like you, I went to school, my husband and I both went to school. I went to private school and public school. And when my son Parker asked me to homeschool him, I was like,
Oh, he
we don't,
asked you?
he did. He was in first grade. And it was
Aw.
heartbreaking because he was 6 years old. He was, straight A's, whatever that means when you're six, but
Yeah.
he was really good he was super smart, so good at everything. Like you taught him once, he knew how to do it,
Aw.
and all the kids in class loved him and he just hated going to school. And he was starting to fake like he was sick in the morning. And I was like, Parker, I know you're not sick. So if like what's the matter? I just don't want to go to school. I want to be home with you. And I said, okay, well then just tell me that. Like, don't lie and say that you're sick. Like if you're having a hard day and you don't want to go, just tell me and you can stay home. So
Aw.
then, and I asked his teacher, like, is something going on? Why does he not want to be here? She's like, no, he's like, the popular kid in the class. Everybody wants to be with him. He's good at everything. Like there's no reason he would not like it. But he was 6 years old. We were getting up early in the morning, rushing off to school. He's at school for like 7 hours. By the time you sit through the traffic on the way home and get home, he's gone from the house like 8 hours. And then he's got homework. And then it's, dinner and bath and bed. And that was just literally all it was. And it was like, I think that was wearing on him. And so when he asked us to homeschool, I was like, no, we don't do that. We are not that family.
That's not gonna happen over here.
No. And so, but then I read that book, Dumbing Us Down. I read a few other books about homeschooling because that's, it, like I said, the internet, it was a thing, but
Yeah, not
there,
like it is
it
now.
was like you went to the library and you still like, I got books. So, but I remember and then we went to a homeschool conference and that was to me like how you got more information. So
Yeah.
much easier these days. I mean, yeah, conferences are great, but it's so easy to just hop online and find community and, reach out to people. But we went to this conference and we went with some friends who were not your typical homeschool family. We definitely stood out like a sore thumb there because it was a lot of like what you would think about homeschooling,
Yeah.
uh, everybody kind of wearing homemade clothes and that kind of stuff. And which is totally fine. Like I have so much respect for people that do that. I just
Oh,
don't.
yeah.
So we just stuck out like a sore thumb. But I remember this woman, she's like, this is my 25th year homeschooling because she had like 12
Tons of
kids or something. And she's like, this is our 25th year homeschooling. And I still have not decided what curriculum I'm going to use this year. And we often change our curriculums like in the middle of the year, depending what our family needs. And that stuck out to me because I was like, I felt like I needed to have it all together. It was our first year homeschooling. And I felt like I need to buy the best curriculum. I need to do all the things. And I was stressing myself out. And when I heard her say that, it always stuck with me because when we got to a point in a certain curriculum where one of the kids was struggling and it just wasn't working, I wasn't scared to just say like, you know what? This isn't right for us. Like, let's try something new. So, you
Yes.
know, it was something that really helped me on my journey because you don't, like you said, you know your kids better than anybody, and you can change things up in the middle of the year if you need to. You can pull your kids out right now if you need to. They're your kids, you
Exactly.
know? So,
Yep. I know you said, oh, you touched on so many great points. I love what you said about changing curriculum because I'm like the poster child for that. I've switched curriculum mid-year so many times, and I love trying new curriculum, which can be kind of an issue because I want to try it all. But I think that is so important to teach young or like newer homeschoolers is that if you chose a curriculum that you've never even looked at and you absolutely hate it and your child's hitting a wall, sell it. There's so many resale Facebook groups and other homeschool moms locally that would buy it from you. Sell it, get some money back, and buy yourself some new curriculum. You never should just be forcing something that you and your child are hating because it totally is the recipe for not being confident at all. And also, like your schedule. And another beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur and homeschooling is that it's like the culture of your family and of your home. So we love that our kids are here all day and they get to see us doing Zoom calls and recording podcasts and working on our business. And if we want to take a Friday off and all go to the beach for the day, we can. And so we love that they see us being entrepreneurial because you can tell that it rubs off on them and they just think differently. Like instead of them assuming, well, I'll grow up and be, a firefighter one day or a doctor, which are beautiful things. We need those. They start to think, well, maybe I'll start a business helping people do this. And, us asking them, well, what problems can you solve as you grow older? So it's just a beautiful thing having them home with you all the time. There's so many other benefits. Yeah, and I mean, we could talk all day about like
I
the
know.
the dumbing us down. Like I could talk a lot about that, but we'll stay
Yeah.
off that today.
Maybe we've inspired a few people to look into it. Well, that'll be another episode for another day. But um what do you think? So, like for the mom she is an entrepreneur and she is homeschooling, whether it's by choice or because of the pandemic, like what advice would you give her when she's feeling like she can't get it all done? She can't run her business and homeschool her kids.
That is great advice. So I think what really helps, first of all, is like brain dumping everything. And if you're like me, you keep everything in your brain and you are like, I have to do this for my business, this for my homeschool, and nothing's getting done well. So I think one of the things you can do is like brain dump everything you have to do in a week. And kind of how I like to do it is Sunday night, I kind of plan out my weeks. And maybe you have days that are like, work days and school days, and you have days designated to getting a lot of your entrepreneurial work done. And then maybe you have days where you're going to be more focused on school, take the kids on a field trip, go on a nature hike, bake cookies, do something a little more school centered and, go through their curriculum if you have it. So I think for that mom, like you need to step back and just say, what's important here? Am I focusing on the right things? My kids are probably thriving, even though I'm all concerned about not getting these worksheets done, but they know the content. I'm just kind of checking off boxes here. So for me, it always goes back to your vision. Like, what's your vision for your homeschool? What's your vision for your business? And for your family, like, what's your overall family vision? And are you in alignment, or are you trying to like add all these extra things into your days that aren't necessary? Because most of the times our kids are doing so well and they're so smart, and you'll realize it when you least expect it, when you're at like a grocery store and you ask them a question, or a stranger asks them a question and they so eloquently answer it. And you're like, yeah, that's right. We homeschool. Like I taught them that, or someone taught them that, and
Yeah.
they're super smart. So I think we're just like so into our to-do lists and like checking boxes that we don't see the bigger picture of how well our family is doing and how our kids are happy and thriving and learning, and how they're not really, a lot of times they're not missing out on a lot when you are working. It's not like all or nothing. Like if you're working, they're suffering. there's just so much to it. And there's so many ways you can create rhythms to like make the two blend well together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that too, creating rhythms, because we never really had like a super strict schedule either. We had like a rhythm. We had certain things we did in a certain order, but it would be different depending on, maybe we were at some friends super late at night, so we let the kids sleep in and we start that rhythm a little bit later in the day.
Yeah.
And like you said, yeah, when there is times where you're focused on your work, there's there's things your kids can be doing. First of all, like you said, they're seeing you work, they're seeing you run your business and create an income for your family, and that affects them as they grow up, and then sure, like maybe they learn something on it from an online course during that time or something like
Right.
that. But yeah, it doesn't have to be so strict. And I remember after the pandemic first started, I had a friend just like in tears, so frustrated with what now she wasn't trying to do their school herself, but she was doing what the school wanted her to do. And it was just insane. Like they wanted these kids to keep the same schedule, but she had multiple kids
Oh,
in different classes trying to keep up with, I was like, stop. And, I was like, find out if you can just make sure they get their work done on your own schedule. And, it ended up working it out. So I think we get so used to doing what, like, okay, we're told to do this. This is what we've always done. Like, we got to keep doing it. And sometimes, like you said, it's not aligned with your values. It's not aligned with your vision for your family. It's not even, like we both, Serena and I go to the same church, and, on Sunday, there was a guest speaker, and she was talking about being aligned with like your purpose and with what God's called you to be doing. And when you are out of that alignment, it's sin. And it was such a great message. It was really like, it was convicting, it was encouraging. And you have to remind yourself, you don't have to beat yourself up and be like, oh, I'm in sin. But there is this point where you have to know who you are. You have to know where you're headed. And when you start to do things that are not aligned with that purpose and your values for your family, being out of that alignment it's just going to wreak havoc on your life.
yeah. Oh, I cannot agree more. And a lot of time your alignment is to homeschool and have your own business. And I think a lot of people, they think it's either or, and they're like, well, some moms are called to be homeschooling moms, and some moms are called to be, working entrepreneurial moms. But if you're like me, you felt the tug to do both. Like I felt the calling on my heart to homeschool my children, but that I always kind of felt this like that's not it. Like there was more that I wanted to do, more impact I wanted to make. So I also love the message, and I do think that alignment is so important, and that you can have your cake and eat it too if you're feeling like you want to have your kids home and homeschool and still run your business. I mean, there's just so many little tips and tricks. Obviously, when they're young, it's a little more difficult. You might have to hire, I have friends who are entrepreneurs that have childcare, like they have a nanny come in the mornings. But like for us with rhythms, we homeschool in the afternoon because we're not super early morning people, and mornings when we're most creative for our business. And we like to read or go for a walk or, do creative stuff. So the kids like to play all morning. We have boys, they're super busy. So if at 9 a.m. I tried to have them sit and do book work, it would be a disaster. So for us, our rhythm is work in the morning, and then we all have lunch together, and then we do some homeschool in the afternoon. And then at that point, their little friends call them to play, Minecraft and stuff. And then they get on, and that's during a pandemic or whatever we're in at this point, that's their social interaction is, talking to their friends on their video games and their Facebook Messenger. So yeah, so that's kind of like our rhythms. Then we have dinner, and maybe we have karate, but like it's not super crazy stressful. It's just kind of the kids know when we're working, here's a list of things you can do while mommy and daddy have this call. You can read, you can have, screen time, you can go outside and jump on the trampoline, play with the
Yeah.
dog. So just kind of giving your kids, board games, puzzles, little like I always like baskets of things that they can do, Legos to build when you have to get work done. If they're not napping anymore, just kind of like, here's your basket of what you can do while mommy gets this email written. Like, I need 20 minutes. So do this thing. So you'll get that with time. I mean, confidence does come with time and experience. You don't just grow up, you're not just going to be like a confident homeschooler the first day. Although if you are, I applaud you, and you should probably come help me with my course, teach the course. But I definitely think over time, it just builds and you see like, oh, I've got this. My kids are learning and thriving, and you get more and more relaxed, and that structure kind of like strips off you over time, and you get your own groove.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. Oh, we could talk about homeschooling all day.
I know. And you've always inspired me, Corie, because you were probably when I met you through like the BBD world and through our mentor Colin, you inspired me because you were really the first person I knew that like had kids graduating, or your son at that point. I want to say maybe Morgan graduated while we were in our mastermind together.
Mm-hmm.
And so you already had Parker graduate. And I was like, oh my gosh, you homeschooled your kids. Because back when you started, I guess that would have been almost 15 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as popular as it is now. Now it's like a hip, cool. I feel like it's like not a trend, but it's a growing phenomenon where, like you said, it's not just the people making their own clothes anymore, which those are my people. I love them. But it's like just regular people, our homes, regular, I guess I should say, like, average people that never would have thought they could homeschool are now wanting to homeschool. And it's just becoming a lot more common. There's so many communities of people on the internet, especially Instagram, to find your people. So I don't know. I just was inspired by you that you started when it wasn't so popular, and that you were an entrepreneur who built this really successful business while doing it all. You were just like,
well, thank you.
My dream. You were like, oh, it can happen. You successfully made both happen and graduated kids from homeschooling, which is a really like.
Thank you. Thank you.
Applaud you for that.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it is different for everybody. And it was so different when I started my business. I was finding bits of time here and there, like little, like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. I was not, that was like when I had my blog and wrote my book. I was not working for hours and hours on end. It was like, getting up before the kids got up and getting some writing done, or, writing, like taking Morgan. I literally wrote my book while Morgan was at ballet, and she would be in ballet, and I would go to the Starbucks next door and write my book. Aww. And, so it's finding those, if it's a lifestyle you want, you'll do what it takes, Yes. And you might not work the traditional 9 to 5, and your kids might not be learning the traditional 9 to 5. It's finding what works for your family and, integrating that into your lifestyle. And, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's exhausting. There was a million times I wanted to stop and put my kids in school, and, the empty threats of, I'm going to put you back in school. And the funny thing is like my kids, after a couple of years, they were like, we do not want to go to school, because they realized how much it was fun. It was not such a burden. They didn't have homework. There was just so many pros to it that they never wanted to go back to school. And then, yeah, Parker and Morgan both graduated early. Brody's on track to graduate early. And so now that obviously my kids are older, 2 of them are out on their own working. Morgan has her own business, and she's working part-time for my parents and sister. So I only have Brody home, and he's in high school, which when my kids are in high school, I'm not doing any of the teaching. It's online programs. And so I obviously have way more time to spend on my business now than I did in the past. But, it's really, like you said, knowing what your values are, knowing what your vision is for your life and your business and your family, and choosing to do what it takes to follow that.
Yep. Oh, I love it. Exactly. And then also finding your people because I do know that the more homeschoolers I met, and then now meeting entrepreneurial homeschoolers, it's just so comforting because we love our friends, but a lot of our friends here in Delaware um, work jobs and their kids aren't homeschooled. So for a long time, I was like the odd man out, and no one could really, everyone's like, oh, what kindergarten classes, who's your kid's teacher? And I would just sit there quietly like, oh gosh, like we're homeschooling. And everyone thought we were kind of nuts. Like, why would you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Why am I doing it? I knew why, but it is hard to talk about in the beginning. So it is so comforting finding other like-minded people. So, I encourage anyone out there who's brand new. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're a homeschooler, like, reach out. I'm happy to chat with you. Find other parents that kind of have the same values as you, because it does help to have those parents to talk to. Because a lot of times when you're at your co-op and all of the moms there are I say just homeschoolers, but I mean like they don't have a business. They're full, everything they do is homeschooling. It's harder to relate to them because that's their 100% focus is like their family and homemaking and homeschooling. And it's a beautiful lifestyle. But if you also feel like you have this other calling and you want to make an impact in other ways in the world, it's like you feel this pull that they don't necessarily feel. And so finding someone that really shares those values is so important to being confident and just enjoying the ride.
Absolutely. So true. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I do have a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
So I love to ask all of my guests the same question. What is one piece of advice that you have for a new entrepreneur?
Ooh, a
So
new
this doesn't have to do with homeschool or anything. Just if somebody is starting out on their entrepreneurial journey, what's one piece of advice you have for them?
That's great. I would say, because there's a lot to focus on, right? You can get squirrely with a lot of different things, but I would say like the most important thing is really hone in on your why, because that is going to be the driving force in everything else you do. So your why and your vision, which might be repetitive, but I just really feel like if you know your vision and where you want to be in 5, 10 years and how you want to help, that's the number one thing is like, how do you want to serve your audience? Who do you want to serve? And once you can figure those things out and have your vision for your business, I just think then the rest will kind of fall into place. But if you focus on the website and your social media and content right away, I think that's when you get overwhelmed, when you don't have your point and your like guide of where you're going.
Yeah, so good. So good. Okay. And then my last question is, what does living on purpose mean to you?
That is an awesome question, Corie. So, what does living on purpose mean to me? It means living with intention every day of like what I'm feeling God is calling on my life and what's important to me. What are my priorities and my values, and just focusing on that and not worrying about all the other, busy stuff around me that can distract me. It's just really focusing on my purpose and living fully in that and unapologetically just being me and living for that.
I love it. That's beautiful. Amazing. And it all, like literally everything we talked about today, it just keeps coming back to that, to like knowing your purpose, knowing your values, knowing your vision. And, I think so many people go through life without knowing what that is for them. They let someone else decide for them. They chase the American dream and try to keep up with their neighbors, keep up with the Joneses, and you end up realizing like, oh, that wasn't for me. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Nope, that is so true. I really believe I spent like my 20s doing just that, like living what my parents told me I needed to do and what society said I needed to do. And luckily for me, I met a man and married a man who's like, I don't give a rip what anyone says or thinks about me. So there is a lot of freedom in like realizing your purpose and vision and living 100% for that and not worrying about the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you, Serena. So
Thank
tell
you.
my listeners where they can find you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Corie. This has been awesome. I know we could talk all day.
I know.
Okay, so Instagram is a great place at the Confident Homeschooler for that. And I feel like there you'll find links in my bio to if you want to join a Facebook group. We have a Telegram group as well if you're not on Facebook. Our website's on there. We have like a freebie if you're having trouble choosing curriculum that you can grab, and a free workshop as well. So you can kind of find more things at our website through our Instagram. So I would say go to our Instagram or www.theconfidenthomeschooler.com if you don't have Instagram.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, Serena.
Thank you, Corie.
Thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. I hope that you have gained a little confidence in your homeschooling journey after our conversation. And if you want to follow Serena or check out the Confident Homeschooler, I have got all the links in the show notes. You can follow her on Instagram. She also has a Confident Homeschooler Instagram account. I've got links to her website. All that good stuff is in the show notes. So make sure you give Serena a follow. And if you feel alone in the homeschool journey, reach out to her, reach out to me. We would love to just be support for you, and to know that, if this is something that God is calling you to do, that you are fully able to do it. And we're here to support you. So, and make sure you guys get on the wait list for the Purpose Babes Society. So the doors are opening soon, and my wait list people, my wait list babes, get special little perks. So go to CorieClark.com/VIP, and make sure you guys tune in next week, because next week I have an amazing guest. He is a mentor. I am a student of his, and he just has really changed my business for the better, and thousands and thousands and thousands of other people's businesses. So I'm so excited. I was super honored that he even, said, yeah, I'll be on your show. He's amazing. So I'm not going to let you in on any more of the secrets. You've got to tune in next week. So make sure that you are subscribed to the show. And if you're a new subscriber, I would love if you would go ahead and head on over to iTunes and rate and leave a review for the show as well. And make sure you guys drop your Instagram handles in your reviews, because I would love to connect with you on Instagram. That's where I love to hang out. It's just Corie Clark on Instagram, Corie Clark. And I am the one running my own personal account. I am the one talking to my friends in the DMs. So make sure you give me a follow and drop your handle in your review on iTunes. Thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. I will see you back here next week with my super exciting special guest. Have an amazing week, you guys. Love you.